This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
And welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Roby Brock. Well, it's been a busy week on the political front here in Arkansas. Attorney General Leslie Rutledge drops out of the governor's race. Her challenge to Sarah Huckabee Sanders, also seeking the Republican nomination. And Rutledge will now run for lieutenant governor. And it is a crowded Republican primary field. I caught up with Robert Coon of Impact Management Group and Dr. Jay Barth, Professor Emeritus of Hendrix College, for their analysis. Good to have you both with us. And let's begin with the biggest political news of the week here in Arkansas. Attorney General Leslie Rutledge pivots out of the governor's race, that Republican primary versus Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and goes into the lieutenant governor's race, which is a pretty crowded Republican field now with 6 candidates in it. Jay Barth, I come to you first on this. Is this a surprise that Leslie Rutledge has moved out of the governor's race?
No, not at all. I mean, I think that there's just certain political realism in terms of what races are winnable and which ones aren't, and this one wasn't for her, and maybe probably not for any other Arkansas Republican against Sarah Huckabee Sanders. The question was which exit ramp General Rutledge was going to take, and there had been rumors about several different potential exit ramps, from state Supreme Court to a couple of congressional seats to, of course, finally the one that she took, which was the lieutenant governor's race. What's interesting about this race is it's a very packed field. It's unclear how long it stays as full as it is. I think that some candidates probably have to rethink the race a little bit. That said, they all comes with some strengths, and there will be sharp elbows in the race, no matter what. And I think that's going to be super interesting. I think it's going to be the race to watch on the Republican side in all likelihood. I mean, the Secretary of State's race also has some sharp elbows in it. I think it's fair to say as well. So, we always knew it was going to be an interesting primary season in Arkansas on the Republican side. It's now not at the governor's race level, but down in these lower constitutional offices, which could be very consequential for the future of Arkansas politics.
Robert, should we be expecting a Trump endorsement of Leslie Rutledge sometime soon? What do you think led her to get out of the race against Sarah Huckabee Sanders?
Well, I think the headwinds there were really strong for General Rutledge. I think everybody's seen the polling that's been out, and the money advantage that Sarah Huckabee Sanders has had in that race. There's a lot of mountains out there that are just too tough to climb. I think this was one of them. I do think that, like Jay said, there were several different off ramps for her to choose from that potentially made sense. I think this is one where she can actually continue to use the dollars that have been put into a statewide race. General Rutledge she's been AG. She has a record. She has a conservative bona fides. I don't think really many people would question those. And so she's going to bring a lot to this race. Whether a Trump endorsement's in the works, I think it's possible. You never know. But it is a crowded field. There's lots of good candidates in that race. I think the sharp elbows will definitely start flying. Some have already flown already when she got in.
Yes, obviously the comment that she made about being bored with the office of lieutenant governor, that was in the response from Doyle Webb, his campaign in there. So, but tell me, what does this do for the governor's race now, particularly for Sarah Huckabee Sanders? She does not have to spend really a dime of money in this Republican primary. Not that it was maybe going to be impacted anyway, because she had a big lead when you look at some of the internals. But Robert, I come to you first on this. What does Sarah Huckabee Sanders get to do now that Leslie Rutledge is not in the race?
Well, I mean, the money, you've already explained that. She doesn't have to spend any. It's going to be hard for her with the amount that she's amassed to even spend all of that, prior to November anyway, whether there's a primary or not, I think. This certainly takes off any burden that's required there. But it frees up her time. It frees up her purpose. If she's obviously becomes the presumptive nominee and clearly the front runner in the governor's race, she can spend her time working to support legislative candidates and start laying the groundwork for an administration that she will have to work with legislators on. That starts now. She also, in theory, could, lend her time and effort to, supporting, Senator Boozman in his race. I know that's obviously someone that she cares about, having run his race in the past. So really, she's got a free card to, do that, and also potentially raise her profile, outside the state.
Jay, what do you see in terms of other advantages for Sarah Huckabee Sanders with this exit of Leslie Rutledge?
Well, I think Robert was really hitting at it at the end. Is that she really gets the opportunity to move early into the head of the political party role that a governor has, and of course, on paper, that is still Governor Hutchinson. But I think that what she can begin to do through her support for legislators, some of whom may be in some, a little bit more challenging races because of redistricting, she really gets to move into that role. It will be interesting to see, does she engage in any primaries if she herself does not have a primary opponent? That will be a very interesting thing. The odds are you would suggest not, but the Boozman primary may be a special case. She's got a long-term relationship there. Obviously, President Trump has already endorsed Senator Boozman, so that would be the one place to watch. It may be more consequential for her to get involved in some legislative races, but that's trickier turf and may actually could do her some damage over the long haul. So, it will also be interesting to see if there is any token opposition that gets in against her, which would give her more room to spend more money to really kind of to fill the airwaves and make her case for the fall even earlier. So I think still some questions out there, but she will, I think, begin to move into that role as head of the political party, and that can be a powerful role.
Well, she's got enough money. She could spend it all and still have a lot left in the bank there. All right, gentlemen, we've touched on two other subjects that I want to come to. One is Senator John Boozman. The Arkansas poll comes out in the last week, shows him well under 50%. I think he was at 38%, if I remember correctly, maybe 39%. Do either of you think, and Jay, I'll let you go first on this, do you think that John Boozman is in political trouble?
Yeah, we've had this conversation before. I mean, when our last poll, which also showed him in a similar situation, and my take then, I think it's still my take that in a normal state, yes, he'd be in big trouble as a long-term incumbent who has just not ever fully broken through with the Arkansas public. That said, I do think that as the most likely Republican nominee, he has that real advantage in a state where that brand is very valuable, and where the Democrats really in this race have not put forward to date a candidate who has fundraising ability and the ability to kind of capture attention the way that I think Chris Jones has kind of gotten to that level in the governor's race, although he's certainly dramatically disadvantaged. I think that he has broken through in a way that none of the Senate candidates on the Democratic side have. So normally, yeah, he's a flawed candidate, but if he can just get the nomination, that's all it takes probably in this cycle, and I think the odds are he will. The real question is, it's a somewhat crowded field as well, and is there enough opposition to draw him into a runoff, which always gets tricky for an incumbent. Although in Arkansas, those incumbents tend to win those runoffs. It's never pretty, and so I think that's the big question moving forward.
All right, Robert. Jay's kind of touched much more on the general election prospects for John Boozman, but in that Republican primary, which you would know well, Jay Beckett, Jan Morgan, a couple of others kicking around there. Does John Boozman have problems in the GOP primary?
I don't think so. I think at this point, Senator Boozman's the exception to the rule. I think Jay's right. If you're under 50, in most cases, people would, be sounding alarm bells. I think the only number that matters, and we didn't see that number from the Arkansas poll, but the only number that matters in his race is where is he with Republican primary voters? I mean, that is the race. A Republican is going to win the U.S. Senate seat. So, I mean, the question is that John Boozman? I would say at this point, yes, it is. We haven't seen that he's, underwater with Republican voters or anything like that. So I think his brand, while certainly lower profile, is still good with Republicans. I think you're going to have to see, really the attacks come out from Jan Morgan and Jake Beckett against Senator Boozman. But, one of the areas that we touched on in our last poll was there was a group of voters that, really viewed Biden negatively that didn't have an opinion on Senator Boozman. And that is really fertile ground for him. I think we have seen him since that time. He has ratcheted up kind of the rhetoric against the Biden administration. He's getting more into that messaging. And I think that messaging will serve him well going into the primary.
Yeah, my slight correction for me there. I said Jay Beckett earlier. I meant Jake Beckett. So thank you for knowing.
There's a lot of Becketts around.
There's a lot of Becketts running this time. All right, last question for you. Jay first. Robert gets to put the cherry on top of the sundae here. Legislative redistricting. We've seen the maps that look like they're going to be fairly permanent. There might be some small changes to them. I'll just give you general takeaways. Jay, what are you seeing in those maps that interest you? And then Robert, same question coming to you.
Yeah, maybe the thing that interested me the most was they didn't look as dramatically different as I might have expected. I would have expected maybe some coalition on the Board of Apportionment to maybe make things more complicated for some of the more complicating members of the Republican caucus, those who have been most hostile to the governor and his interest. So that didn't happen. The result is a lot of maps that look pretty similar to the old maps, except, of course, new districts added in those high growth areas, the suburbs around Little Rock, and then especially in Northwest Arkansas. So, probably the surprise for me is I was less surprised. There were not those eye-shattering maps. The one exception, of course, the Megan Godfrey map in Northwest Arkansas, which has gotten a lot of attention. If there are going to be changes, that might be an area where there could be some changes. Obviously, she was drawn out of her old district with just a nudge of it left in what is now a majority Hispanic population district, not a voting age population district, but a population district. That's the one kind of interesting thing on the Democratic side, and I think could have some implications for the rest of the maps up in Northwest Arkansas.
All right. How about you, Robert?
I think the most interesting thing that I think is still kind of emerging is, there's certainly some House districts that changed where you may have a member that, feel they're still, they're the incumbent in their district, but the district has changed around them based on the way the lines were drawn. And, there have already been some. Representative John Payton's one who has said, well, hey, my district's different. And, instead of trying to just, meet all the new people in my House district, I might as well go for the Senate. I think there's potentially some other ones out there where people are looking around going, if I have to go, meet a whole new electorate that I'm not used to running in front of, I might as well try to seek the larger prize. And so that's going to be interesting to see how those situations play out, if more of those kind of primaries even start to, develop just based on, somebody's lines changing to where they're having to meet a new electorate anyway. So the risk is there for them, the reward's there for them to take a little bit bigger risk.
Yeah, the most interesting thing to me is what's going on in Northwest Arkansas, particularly on the state Senate side. You got a new state Senate seat up there. You've got Jim Hendren running as an independent this time, likely to get a Republican challenger. Can the Republicans take that seat back from his independent status? Cecile Bledsoe retiring, Lance Eads stepping down. You could have 4 new faces from the 5 or 6 member Northwest Arkansas Senate delegation, and that would be a dramatic change. So that's my one to watch right there on all that. All right, Robert Coon, Jay Barth, always good to visit with you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.